Hello and welcome to Media Nama's conversations with crypto founders across India. Over the last 2, 3 months, the cryptocurrency universe in India has been thrown into the deep end with the government saying that they might propose a new legislation which will ban what they call private cryptocurrency, while at the same time it will give the RBI the opportunity to issue a digital currency. Now it's unclear what the entire contours of the bill is going to be because the government has not provided much clarity on it. However, there have been a lot of murmurings in the industry about what the government could be planning and how regulations could come about in the next year or so or over time, thanks to the proposed bill. Now we have Geotis, a cryptocurrency exchange with us. It was founded in 2018 by Arjun Vijay and Vikram Subburaj. Arjun is the CEO of Geotis and Vikram is the CEO. Hi, Arjun and Vikram. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Advait.
Hi.
Hi, Advait.
Hi. So, let's kind of start with what's happened in the last 2, 3 months. Has it been chaos? Has it been confusing? Has it been scary? What's happening?
So, so this is kind of a recurring event now in the crypto industry. Now, been in the industry for quite a few years now. What we're noticing is we notice some news or some rumor that could come from the government, stating that the government is planning to do something on the regulatory front, or restrict or bank restriction, things like that. So apart from the 2018 RBA restriction, all those news that has come before and that has come after, it has more or less been like, okay, now for that particular week, there'll be a lot of talk about it. But post that, business comes back to normal, but this time it has been a bit different. This 2, 3 months, we've had the talk about direct banning, and then the talk about CBDC, and then we've had the finance minister and others also talk about what's going to happen in future. So this time it has been a lot of mixed emotions, starting when the news came out that there might be a ban. There was a lot of panic among people, but then after that there was a long hiatus. There was not much of news that came out. People went back to business, they started trading, but with a lot of other bits and part of good news that is coming out, I think the mood is generally back. I think it also has to partly do with the prices of Bitcoin and other coins. They are cheering up the investors now.
So I remember when the government first, I mean, actually the government didn't announce it first. It came out in the Lok Sabha bulletin, and I think because it was so direct in the bulletin, that created some panic. What are investors saying nowadays? Because as far as I know, that initially there was a drop, there was a bit of a sell-off in the in the market, but since then I think prices have remained. At least India prices are not trading at such big deep discounts.
Yeah. I think, see, initial the chaos was there, the panic was there. Uh, Frankly, even among people in the crypto industry, like even people who are running exchanges like us, we were talking to each other. It's like, what do they mean by private cryptocurrencies, right? Now, I thought Bitcoin and Ethereum are all public blockchains. Now, what is this going to happen? What would they mean about this? Are they going to mean CBDC is going to be the government's one, and everything else is going to be termed as private? So this was the kind of discussion that was happening among people in the ecosystem. Now, customers, they were worried, right? All their hard-earned investment, they thought that it's not going to be easy for them to encash. So there was a lot of panic selling. Initial few days, at least, there was panic selling. But after that, that's what Bitcoin did. Bitcoin kept cheering up people with prices. When people were panic selling, there was again a good movement in the price. So that brought the market back to normal. So now I don't. Now there's again a premium in the Indian market. There are more buyers than sellers here. There's a buy pressure here that is going on now. More people are wanting to invest. We are getting more and more inquiries from people now. So I think unless and until there's a clear-cut communication that comes from the government end, anything regarding the regulation, I think the market is going to react good to the price movements here.
So compared to, let's say, 2018, when the RBI issued the circular which told the banks you cannot do business with any crypto firm, you'd say the fear is less today, that investors are more educated, or they're more, they're more stronger today in terms of their convictions.
So the people who have been there from 2017, 2018, we all know the story, right? The boy who cried wolf. The first time you hear, you panic. Second time you hear, you panic, right? Like after some time, it's like when it happens, let it happen, right? Even in the proposed bill, they talk about giving like 3 to 6 months moratorium period where you can still continue to trade. They're giving timeline to exit, right? If you look at it, if people had panicked in 2017, 2018, 2019, they could never be part of this journey, right? In the last 3 years, people made a lot of money, right? Even exchanges like us, had we panicked in 2018, gone out of business. You see, actually, what has happened? The guys who went out of India, they had to come back, right? So I think the good thing about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is it is a technology that's kind of inevitable, like Elon Musk said, right? It is going to be the future. So the longer this government waits, longer the government pushes this matter into future, right? It's more positive, it's more optimistic for us. That's what I could say, right? Like just look at, right, 3 4 months back, ban looked like a possibility, but then once Elon Musk, JP Morgan, all those guys started making huge statements. BlackRock is making the investment. Twitter, Jack Dorsey is openly endorsing Bitcoin. So all these celebrities, they are coming into this, and right in the middle of the bull run, it's very difficult for government to take such a hard call, right? There are millions of investors to take into consideration. The guys who are well versed in technology, they are batting for Bitcoin, right? Except for like couple of camps who are pretty conservative, right? Everyone is batting for Bitcoin. I see more and more people who were totally against Bitcoin in 2017. They have come to this territory, right? They are vouching for Bitcoin. They're saying that's a technology. Okay, it may not replace rupee. See, at some point of time, people are talking it as a crazy money. It's nothing. Right now, they're saying, okay, it can parallelly exist with CBDCs. It can parallelly exist with rupees, right? You can see that the talk is changing. The dialogue is changing. The way people are addressing Bitcoin. Bitcoin is getting respect from every quarters, right? People used to laugh. Like people used to call it Ponzi. I don't see anyone calling them Ponzi these days, right?
No, I
So
think
I
there's
think there's a
definitely
lot of
been a.
improvement. I
Sorry.
think if government takes more time, it's going to be like really positive.
Yeah. I think there's definitely been a sea change compared to 3 years ago, where even the world's biggest banks, the global banks, were completely against this, and they were started building their own coins. J.P. Morgan, for instance, and now you're seeing a lot of them now buying stuff on the treasury. So, what do you think of the mainstreaming of Bitcoin all of a sudden? Why do you think that's happened? Do you think it's because I'm going to make a massive return on it? So, if a bank buys $1 million worth of Bitcoins today, it could double within a year and a half.
So I think it has
See,
majorly
that
has
is
to do
always
with
there.
the. Oh, sorry. Arjun, continue,
So
continue.
so I think there are two parts to it. Yeah, there are two parts to it. One is looking at this short-term thing, but see, any asset, it goes through a maturity cycle, right? A lot of people, they don't touch the small caps, they don't touch the mid caps, but at once it reaches certain size, it kind of becomes inevitable. Everyone wants it to be part of their portfolio, right? In 2017, the whole build-up, the bull run was all about institutional adoption. Institutional adoption, institutions are coming, but we never see any large institutions coming and batting for Bitcoin. But this time, it's totally different. You look at Mastercard, right? They are talking about crypto, how they are specifically launching crypto based cards, how they are adopting crypto. You see every major financial organization because now they know this is serious, right? This is not something, it like it has come of age, right? So, and even before this, right, like a year back also, IMF and FATF, they started making good things about, they started talking good things about Bitcoin, right? I see this as like a continuous thing, right? But always there is like a peak inflection point, right? The inflection point more or less I think comes with the price increase. So but see, whatever is happening now, it's nothing compared to what happened in 2017. 2017, the price went like 30x, 50x, 100x, right? But right now, it's also about people are understanding the technology, right? There's much more trust, much more belief. So both of this is going together. Vikram, you
So,
want to add something?
yeah.
No, I think that's good. I think Advait can
So
continue.
Vikram, in terms of the mainstream adoption, theoretically, I think a lot of the theories behind cryptocurrencies are now being reduced, are going away, right? So anonymity is gone because every exchange needs KYC. It's supposed to be decentralized, but now, as per my calculations, corporations own about 15% of the market. So, do you think that some people see the utility of the utility of Bitcoin has changed over time?
So, see, Advait, the way I
See, I
see
see
it,
this is
right?
like an electricity.
Yeah. Arjun, I'll just jump in, Arjun. Yeah. So the way we see it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So Bitcoin is also going to have this evolution that, all products had, right? Even gold had this evolution at some point of time, right? Now, just an example, right? Now, just moving a century back, not a lot of people in India even would have had good quantities of gold. No, now compared to now, I think a lot of people hold gold in their hand, right? So this evolution will happen, right? Now, if it doesn't happen, Bitcoin will have its own death, right? Now, when that adoption has not happened, when it is not spread across a lot of people, just few people holding that, they'll start losing value for that. So once they cease, they're starting losing value because there's not much of adoption. Only you're holding it in your hand. They're going to start selling off, right? So this evolution will happen, right? The moment is just centralized in one place and stays like that for a very long period of time, it's going to go useless, right? So this
Yeah,
evolution
and
will
and it's
happen.
also basic math. Yeah, so to add on to what Vikram is saying, it's also basic math, right? You cannot start with 7 billion population with something. It has to start somewhere. It will start with hundreds, then thousands, then millions, right? You look at mobile phones. Like 15 years back, who had mobile phones? And today, every single citizen in India has mobile phones. That is part number one. Part number two, what is Bitcoin? How is it going to be used? This question, no one knows the answer. Even Satoshi Nakamoto, he would have only imagined. This is like electricity, this is like internet. How someone is going to use Bitcoin, whether they are going to make it for purchasing something, whether it's anonymity should be there in cryptocurrencies or not, all those things are up for debate, right? How it is going to be, only time will tell, right? Like just like how democracies are evolving, how countries are evolving, no one could predict how a particular thing will work, right? That is a beautiful thing. The whole 2017 conflict about whether Bitcoin should be used to purchase a coffee or whether it should be used only for serious stuff, right? Whether Bitcoin should support smart contracts or it's smart contracts only for Ethereum and other things. Bitcoin is serious currency. All those debates will keep on be going, right? In some years, 5 to 10 years, we will find the answers. What Bitcoin actually is, how people are actually going to use Bitcoin. I think the answer is in the future. It's not in the present.
So it's
And
still a
and
sort.
one
Go
thing
ahead.
here, right? Now the decentralization question, right? I think uh, it should be more asked towards exchanges like us now, right? We are centralized, right? Now, at the end, we are saying, let's move everyone to the decentralized world. And one of the major entities, we are sitting as a centralized party here, right? I think that question is the first thing that, most of the exchanges are trying to see. Now, the future is going to be a decentralized exchange, a DEX as people call it, right? Currently, the network and the tech is not fully suited for that. There are a lot of exchanges, DEXs which run on Ethereum's blockchain, but that's pretty expensive right now. Right now, that evolution will happen. By the time the technology evolves, centralized exchanges like us will move towards a decentralized world of operating. Right. So even we are waiting for the tech to get upgraded even more and to move to that space. Right. So we will also have our every centralization is currently there will have our evolution towards a decentralization.
So just to touch upon that point, before we get into the policy-related question, of what happened in 2018, I was just checking the price of Ethereum mining today is at $15. It was at $42 at the end of February. So, I have a question about mining completely. Is that on the one hand, mining it's almost a monopoly within China, but now even China's recently district in China has said that they will ban crypto
They
miners.
don't want, yeah.
Uh, so, can you explain the sort of mining aspect here? Because my understanding is that you need more miners and a large amount of computing power for the system to work efficiently. So, as Bitcoin becomes more mainstream, as Ethereum becomes more mainstream, there are more users, more transactions, computing power is only going to go up. So how do you address that question? Because an exchange is just an intermediary. The underlying will be the miner.
Yeah. See, the whole thing about mining is it's based on economics, right? Right now, Bitcoin block reward is 6.25 Bitcoins per every 10 minutes. So if you look at the multiplied by the price, approximately 2.4 crores of money someone is winning every 10 minutes. So what makes sense for people is, right, they can spend up to 2 crores, 1.9 crores for every 10 minutes on, like, put together globally, people are willing to spend 1.8 to 1.9 crores every 10 minutes, right? This will be the overall expenditure on Bitcoin mining per day, or this thing, right, per 10 minutes, right? You multiply that by 24 hours into 30, you'll get the overall expenditure. So some part of this expenditure is going to hardware, some part will go into the electricity costs, right? Thinking about this, you cannot have real-time fluctuations. Like if price drops to $20,000, the cost of mining is not going to drop instantly, right? What will happen is the number of people who are participating in the mining network, they will reduce slowly, so that at any point of time, the probability will remain the same, right? So the Bitcoin is like a dynamic being, right? It adjusts. So even if half the miners disappear, you will see that there's a block difficulty mechanism, right? The mining difficulty mechanism, it adjusts by itself. So technically, there's a puzzle that needs to be solved. The difficulty of the puzzle increases when there are more mining being added. Just look at this, right? 2010, 2011, there are hardly anyone who are mining. People are using laptops and mobile phones. Today, you have acres and acres of farm. If Bitcoin could adapt from that to this level, it can also adapt the downgrades, right? The whole thing is at any point of time, around 2 crores every 10 minutes is being spent to protect the network. That is not going to change very much. There will be a lag, right? If Bitcoin suddenly becomes $80,000, it will still, people are not going to spend too much money, but it will slowly increase. People will see, okay, people are spending 2 crores, but they're earning 8 crores, right? So people will see that this kind of thing is there, and they'll put more money. There'll be more miners who will come into market.
So it's almost
right?
self-correcting.
And suddenly when price goes by 10%, some people will leave.
So it's
exactly, right? Everything is self-correcting. The entire thing about Bitcoin is self-correcting. Last 10 years, like you look at Facebook, you need so many updates.
So as exchanges, do you know miners in India? Are they? Is there a mining?
No,
we have much power.
It's not a profitable business to do in India, right? I mean, due to the electricity costs here, at least Bitcoin.
We know quite a few people who are doing it. Like some people, yeah, it's not happening in large scale, but there are some people who are doing it in Himachal where electricity costs are low, right? We bits and pieces. We don't have like a huge mining pool based out of India.
So it's not farms. No one's doing it on a farm scale.
No, I don't. You don't have that capability to do it.
No.
See, that's the best part, to have an open source system, right? Which, what's happening now. A lot of people in this space, they realize that, okay, maybe mining is consuming a lot of energy. On a larger scale, it is not good for the environment even, right? So a lot of tech research is being done right now. Ethereum is it's already testing out its proof of stake algorithm, where there is no mining that is happening, right? It's completely different concept. No electricity is being spent here, right? Now, even on the fee that is being spent, right, there is another upgrade that might come in Ethereum, where the fee is being set automatically by the chain, right? So now this is the beauty of working in an open source system, right? Now, when there's a problem, there are a lot of smart people, people who are extremely good in this field. They come together, they build the product, which should get approval from all the other participating people in the ecosystem, right? So this beauty of open source, I think, will take care of the problem of mining, electricity being spent, and everything.
Okay, so Ethereum at least is working on this problem. At least I think L2 layer is what it's called, side chains essentially.
See, that's the thing with Bitcoin, right? Now, we are extreme supporters of Bitcoin. Me and Arjun will, see now what we feel, right? What Bitcoin should be doing, right? So they should ideally be waiting for any particular coin to solve this problem of mining, right? So when Ethereum goes live, the proof of stake goes live, and Bitcoin community just has to wait for 6 months or something to see if it's working perfectly. If it works perfectly, they just can copy that particular concept and implement it here in Bitcoin. So that's the thing with being a leader, right? Being a leader, you just have to do one thing. See what is the best practice that is working, copy, paste it here. Your adoption is already there. You will actually grow much more faster than your second guy.
So just now coming to the policy questions, which is the thing that's hitting all our minds. So in 2018, RBI said, banks, you have to stop doing business with the crypto firms. All of you all moved to a P2P exchange model. And I think most companies are still on that model. But what has been your banking relationships like in India? What are the bankers saying to you? What are they saying now with the government, hinting that they could ban?
See, there is, so I think 2008 RBI ban pretty much has been covered, right? So moving on from that, after the Supreme Court news came out, a lot of banks were excited, right? They were excited, they were, it almost looked like they were pretty much following the industry, what volumes were happening. And they were trying to see if they can get good clients and customers from the space, right? But in due course, right, with a lot of news like this that is being coming out, right, the Jan and news that came out, there might be a possible ban, like what we started off talking about. With such news coming in, now building a relationship with a new bank, right now, all the relations that we already built with the existing bank, it's okay, it's going on without an issue. But going and developing a relationship with a new bank, it's becoming a bit tougher, right? The first thing that their compliance team would think, right? We're not pretty sure if they have a clear communication that has been drilled down from the RBI saying, okay, guys, now Supreme Court has said it. I think you can start, going on with normally. I don't think this communication has clearly gone down. So there's a lot of confusion even there. So building a new relationship with the bank is becoming a bit tougher.
But so what are the sort of services that the banks have been offering? I know there's the basic deposit service that they'll give you, that you can convert the crypto to fiat and hold it in a bank account. But are they providing you the same services that they would provide, let's say, a fintech or a corporate
See,
client?
I mean, see, frankly speaking, this crypto space is much technologically advanced, right? When I compared with the normal equity markets and everything, even a smallest exchange in this crypto space, they have really instant way of doing things, right? We have enabled a lot of things on our side, right? Now, integrating with the bank, making things even more faster, smoother, uh, that maybe is not happening to a greater level. We don't get all the products, right? We don't get to use all the products, all features. And that's also not our requirement even. Our current requirement is we just need to maintain a current account, right? Where we can take our deposits and do our withdrawals. I think rest of innovations, we are doing it on our side, right? I think that we can take care.
But you have API access at least? Are they inviting you to those kind of things?
See, now API access, few banks, yes. Again, as I said, right, if you have already had an existing relationship, right, but you already did something in that space, long before all this news had come out, then you don't have an issue, right? But going and having a new account and having an API access got and all this, I don't think it's possible now.
Okay, so Arjun, what were your initial thoughts of this definition that the government is trying to bring between private crypto versus state crypto? I mean, state crypto for me sounds hilarious, but what do you think of this almost new jurisprudence that the Indian government is bringing all across the world? That we are the first ones to introduce the term state crypto across the world.
See, one thing was pretty clear, right? When they made this whole thing, they didn't talk to the experts, right? Because in blockchain, if you talk to anyone in blockchain, the word public blockchain, they'll say, okay, Ethereum, Bitcoin, you're talking about. When they mention private, they'll understand, okay, this is something that is going to be controlled by centralized entities, right? So from then on, we could see that there was no proper communication that has been happening or research, right? That's the first part. But second part, see, governments are generally, what to say, slow to move, right? Over last 200 300 years, monetary authority and governments, they have gone together. It was not always the case, right? Like 200 years back, governments could not print as much money as they want. They were dependent on how much gold they had. The whole colonization of new world, South America, North America, happened because of the search for gold. But now governments think, okay, my entire control is all about the budget, how much money I can print, how much I can tax. This is the essential function of the government, right? So there they are kind of afraid, like how this technology is going to say. As I said, Bitcoin is a beast. We are not sure how this is going to evolve, but this is a technology whose time has come, right? People always fear what they don't understand, right? If you talk to anyone who is like so into Bitcoin, right? Even Elon Musk or like Saylor or Winklevoss twins, even their understanding of Bitcoin is not going to be complete, right? Because this is something, it's evolving rapidly. So in that case, government is, you can say there should be fear, right? Government needs to look at this carefully. But what they need to do is they have a dynamic program, right? They cannot ban it, right? They need to come up with solutions such that it the regulations also evolve, right? Just like internet, maybe the first cyber security laws, they came like 10 15 years back, right? But you see that it's continuously evolving. Right now we have data privacy laws that are coming again, right? So government should not think there's one bill, I'm going to solve everything, right? They need to have a sequence of regulations. They need to have a body like SEBI that monitors this continuously, because it's rapidly evolving, right? This just like a coronavirus, right? Not in the negative sense, right? This is a new technology which needs attention from people, right? It's not like once in a year they'll have a committee, they'll do something and then take a decision based on that, right? You need meetings every month to see what is happening. This whole thing about NFT, right? No one would have thought about NFT 3 months back, 6 months back. Now there is like another aspect to consider, right? How this is going to change the market. What are the things that are going to happen, right? So that's how I see it. The way that dialogue was created, right? And there was no committee that was set up. There needs to be a standing committee, right? There needs to be discussion on this whole thing, right? Even right now, government is taking. But the good thing is, last 1 week, government has moved, right? They are saying they're not going to throw the whole thing, because the whole world is adopting. We cannot ban it, so we need to take a calibrated approach. This is a very, 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 very welcome move from the government, having this kind of discussion, right? This is very positive for the crypto ecosystem. It's still not like 100% positive. They have still not said what is going to be allowed, what is not going to be allowed, but we know that it's not going to be like 100% ban, right? They are moving somewhat towards the middle, right? uh, as long as government takes time, they do their own research, and Bitcoin will keep doing what it's doing, right? And the technology evolves. I see it's very positive, right? So see, even before, right, when there was like almost thoughts about like government is going to ban it, right? That kind of thing was going on. Our whole thought was this is going to be temporary, right? Just like how India closed their doors in 1960s and they had to inevitably open the markets in the 1990. This would again happen. Like government will have to revoke this ban and government will have to regulate Bitcoin at some point of time, right? We said we should be ready even at that point of time, but it never came to that. Okay, that's a very positive thing.
Sure. Vikram, what about you? How do you think? Because if you look at the blockchain policy of the government, for instance, that the government wants to kind of centralize blockchain development within a national blockchain framework, so to speak. So this sort of the need for sovereign control over these things, and I think that's the biggest problem for the Indian government, in my mind, is that Bitcoin's prices will be decided by internationally, and therefore Indian government or SEBI cannot then do price controls and things like that. So is it a question, do you think it's a question of how much the government understands how much control they can have over actually a global system technically?
See, that could be one of the major reasons, Advait. So just to take this argument right now, the best way to go about this is to see Bitcoin not as a currency for time being, right? Let's just park that argument for now. Let's just see it as an asset. Now, when you start seeing it as an asset, everything that applies to gold will apply to Bitcoin now, right? We are not controlling the gold's prices, right? Gold's prices are internationally determined, based on supply and demand. We are also one of the major players, who can decide on the gold prices, right? But not the only player. Similar to that, right now, if the government is going positive, right, the government can also get to a level that the government can hold cryptocurrencies as an asset, right? Now you hold as an asset, gold as an asset, right? Now you can also hold crypto as an asset. You can also be one of the major parties who can decide the prices here, right? Now the major question when I see it as a currency, now what happens then, right? Now that stage, I don't think cryptocurrencies have reached yet, right? For something to be used as a currency, the price has to have at least a bit of stability, right? Currently, I think one of the biggest question that Arjun had posted right now, should I use this Bitcoin to buy a coffee or not? Right now, the moment you think about that, you'll that pizza story will strike you, right? A guy who bought a pizza with 10,000 Bitcoins, right? Now, will something like that happen to you? Is what strikes you, right? Because currently there's a lot of price movements now. So that argument of should the government be worried? Since I'll not have monetary control over the cryptocurrencies yet, I think it's too early to talk about it. As such, now the crypto is not behaving as a currency at all, right? It's behaving as just an asset, right? Now, even all those investors in West who are buying cryptocurrencies, they're considering it as an asset, right? Now, they thought that gold will be a very good, inflationary. Against the inflation, gold will work well as an asset. They bought gold. That's why the gold price was increasing last year. suddenly they're really realizing now gold's prices, they're not appreciating as much as they should, at least in the last few months. Now, this has also become something that is positive for Bitcoin. Now, US dollar is becoming strong, gold is not appreciating, but Bitcoin is appreciating now, right? Now, so Bitcoin has performed in a way better than even gold at this point of time. So it's better to see it as an asset. As an asset class, if a government has to look into it, should their people invest? Or should they invest even? That's how they should see it.
No, because I think I saw an article just today that said that some central banks are considering buying Bitcoin as a digital reserve currency or a reserve asset, and that would work.
So why should they not do right now? Now, if Tesla can do it, right now, one of the major reasons why all these institutions in US they started buying was post-COVID. Dollar was becoming weak. They wanted to safeguard their reserves. They needed some safe asset. Now, for private companies, if it is so important, what about the government? Yeah, I mean, our money is literally lying there, right? They can do it.
No, I think also, at least from a treasury point of view, you have zero, you have negative bond rates in the US. You have bonds going at less than 2%. So if I'm getting 18% on a Bitcoin within 2 months,
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
might as well do that. So this coming to the CBDC question, right? We've seen various versions of CBDCs across the world. You've got the Sand Dollar in the Bahamas, which is a very simple stable coin, which is one is to one conversion. But I think the Chinese version is more of an interest bearing instrument. And there's this whole question of wholesale versus retail CBDCs. So the first question is, do you think India needs a CBDC? Second, if we do need one, what are the contours of it do you think would be required?
See, my 2 cents on this right now. If you ask if we need it, I mean, my answer would be yes, right? We might need it. Now, there's one project. I think it's an Israeli project, if I'm not wrong, that the government is doing. So basically, they've introduced state-backed crypto, which is used in their distribution systems, their ration systems, right? We can do something like that, right? In our public distribution networks, you can just say that this particular token can be used only to buy from these ration shops, right? So things like that can be done. Now my problem again comes with this: any state banked CBDC will have only few use cases, 1 2 3 use case, that's it, right? Now the beauty with the crypto on the reverse is there are like thousand projects which is being masterminded by tens and thousands of developers across the world. So you'll solve 1,000 use cases. CBDC, yes, it will be good for few use cases. You can pick and choose few use cases. Blockchain is a very, very good technology. Bringing in blockchain is going to work beautifully for them, right? So yes, it's very important. But is it going to be like a panacea that is going to solve all India's financial problem? I mean, it will not solve even 1% of the problem we have.
No, I completely get that. It's not a poverty alleviating tool as they want to, as some people see it as.
Yeah.
But just in terms of blockchain, Arjun, like if you do issue a CBDC, and let's say even if it's just a wholesale CBDC, like we were speaking about Ethereum, blockchain is costly to run, and it's costly to set up, it's costly to run, costly to manage. Is that a challenge for CBDCs
No.
that you see across the world? Or?
See, CBDs are going to be like really, really cheap to operate. They need to be centralized. You don't have to basically. So technically, they call it public, but it's going to be private, right? It's going to work on the dynamics of a private blockchain. You need just few servers to run, but the beauty of it is the potential is immense, right? The negatives are almost nothing. Basically, right now we have a RTGS, we have a NEFT, you have a UPI. So this will be another parallel form of financial this thing. This is going to be an experiment to start off with, right? I think any experiments, the first thing should be why not? Let's have a sandbox and let's start doing it, right? As Vikram said, let's take 1 or 2 use cases and start implementing it. But if you look at the other end, as you said, whether they should bear interest or they should not bear interest, right? Whether actually do you need banks, whether common citizens can hold account directly with the Reserve Bank, right? These kind of potentials, right? Whether you can bypass all this credit card, debit card companies, right? Directly get convert your account into an UPI, right? QR code, right? All those possibilities, it's immense, right? And how much they are going to open up the network. they can do something like an India stack and put this over there and let people innovate and build things over and above that. That is also going to be beautiful, right? But having said that, because of this whole nature, as Vikram said, I will definitely again stress on that point, right? You look at Play Store, right? You have hundreds and thousands of apps, right? You don't have one app that solves everything. So at this point, it can solve a lot of problems that we currently have as CBDC, right? It will have a better, efficient form of transport, right? It will help governments track money much more in a better manner, right? You can prevent a lot of scams from happening. RBI will have better control where the fund is moving and how it is moving and how it's getting distributed. All those kind of analytics can be done. So it's definitely something that we should worth consider and do it slowly, right? Start with one pilot project, then next, and then scale it if it works. And we have to keep tweaking it because people are just starting. We have 200 countries. There can be 200 different technologies for 200 CBDCs, right? We have to look at what is best, what is working better. Even today, right? All the financial India, we have IMPS, NEFT. US, they have ACH, right? Everything works in a different manner, and some things are working much better, right? Indian systems, people say it's one of the world class, right? People are trying to copy the system. So this is something, it's going to be like 10-15 year project. It's not going to be a 6-month project. That's how I see CBDCs. Definitely they should be done, but it's not going to solve everything. So also allow crypto companies to innovate and create their own products.
So the RBI
And
has to
good
have
things
a
they can copy.
So the RBI has to have a model that looks at 10-15 years of innovation, not we have to launch next year and immediately start issuing.
Yeah, they should not be rigid with their model. Like we have made it this design, okay, just like how we have a CDMA and GSM, and now GSM one, everyone is using a GSM sim, right? No one uses CDMA, right? So you let multiple technologies parallelly occur, but just because you have started with some technology, you should not stick to it just for the sake of it. Look at the world, how it's evolving. Always keep on upgrading for a better technology.
But so one suggestion that has come from your counterparts in the industry is that the CBDC should be designed like a stable coin, and then that will be used by cryptocurrency exchanges and by investors. So instead of converting rupee to Bitcoin, I convert rupee to digital rupee, and then I convert. So is that a model that will work, or do you think that that is just an unnecessary step that some countries have sort of mandated that you convert to a stable coin in between first?
So the question we need to ask is why? Why do we have to do this particular step? If it serves some purpose, yes, right? If government wants to create like as a sandbox for crypto traders and all those things, assets, right? How people should cash out and all those things, they are coming up with norms. And if this serves that purpose, then it makes sense to do this. But otherwise, I see this is like one of the 1,000 use cases CBDC can solve, right? Basically, what is CBDC? It's money. And what are the use cases of money? Billions and billions, right? Right. So there are like hundreds and thousands of problems that can be solved with CBDCs. There are like 2 orders of magnitude higher, right? Trillions and zillions of problems that can be solved with cryptocurrencies as a whole, right? Because end of the day, CBDC is a subset of cryptocurrencies, right? Cryptocurrencies can definitely be much more than a CBDC can do. CBDC will have limitations. So that's how I see it.
Just one thing to add here, right? If the government does that, I think they don't have to worry about how the adoption of this is going to be. Because the first thing the crypto industry guys are going to jump into this. It's like, the best way to trade is to trade between a stable coin and the other cryptos like Bitcoin or Ethereum. So the adoption adoption problem, we'll solve it off, right?
Actually, to add on to it, basically, so yesterday I was talking to a lecture to some people. So people are asking, what is your role, right? You're talking everything so decentralized. What are you guys doing there, right? I said, we are going to be like a ladder. At some point when world is completely into crypto, like we have to disappear, we have to retire, right? CBDC on a blockchain can actually make us obsolete. I think that's a welcome change. We will find some other role in this whole space, right? You can create decentralized exchange. DEX is possible when CBDC is on blockchain, right? Trading between CBDC, everything can be automated. Right now, the fiat rails, it is not being automated properly. That is the reason why we exist. And on chain is extremely costly. If you solve bandwidth and if you get CBDC on blockchain, like we will have a decentralized, proper decentralized ecosystem, like really decentralized crypto world.
That's interesting that you're saying over time, like Vikram was saying at the earlier start, you are a centralized entity in a decentralized world, and then eventually that will also disappear. So just to come to specific regulations, just looking at the models abroad, Singapore asks companies to register with the Monetary Authority. The US asks companies to register with the Securities and Exchange Commission. India might pursue something similar. I'm sure exchanges will have to register with SEBI, and the RBI will issue the norms on how banking channels flow. Um, just in terms of exchanges specifically, like like the stock exchanges have um, controls on margin, they have circuit breakers, they have liquidity requirements. We saw what happened with Robinhood 2 months ago. Um, so in terms of that, how do you all manage it today in an unregulated environment? I know your website says that you'll insure 100%. So not all exchanges do that. So are there certain things that you think are mandatory that should come into a exchange across the board?
Definitely. Like everyone should have a standard processes, right? Don't want bad players to enter this market and screw up the market, right? So what has happened in India is, just because we don't have clear-cut regulations what we should do, we are trying to see what all we can do and trying to do as much as possible, right? For example, we are doing this PEP check, like no other exchange does that, right? But we see that it actually strengthens our KYC. If you look at the entire picture, what will regulation do? It will look at only these things. How do I do the KYC for users? How do I prevent money laundering? Whether all the trading, right? Whether they all follow the rules or there is any market manipulation that is happening, and how do I tax it? I think these four things are going to be covered by the regulation. Right? What is allowed, what is not allowed, everything will come within this picture. KYC, money laundering, the trading rules and restrictions, and taxation. Right? Within this ambit, it's also like how exchanges can be run, how customers' wealth has to be protected, because end of the day we deal with money, right? We need to get certain licenses, we need to have certain processes in place to ensure customer data is safe, customer money is safe. I think government should definitely play a role, right? It's no this thing. It's We are centralized entities, right? When we make it decentralized, then public will audit it, right? Entire code will be open source. There will be team of researchers, hackers. They will look at it and then find faults. As long as we are centralized, we need to follow the jurisdiction, right? Whatever certifications are necessary, whether ISO is necessary, we need to have it, right? Like how PCI DSS is compulsory for all card payment processors, right? So government should come up and say, so that we all work on an equal platform. There are people who are doing away with risk, KYC risk norms, and they're still working. It's not safe for the customers to go and operate over there, right? But from outside, customers say, okay, this is the easy way to operate, right? But actually, they are doing it wrong, right? They need to work with extra process so that their money is remaining safe.
So I know the the IAMI has come out with the code of conduct. I think that's yet to be finalized, but they've also come out with a white paper that I was able to get access to. That essentially says that a ban on these on cryptocurrency will lead to a black market of this, and then you're going to have all these consequences that the government cannot control. Uh, Vikram, your view on the ban, and sort of how do you think that if the government does go and ban it, what do you think the immediate after effects would be? Do you think that investors will take their 3-6 month window to sell off their positions, or do you think that they will immediately start selling?
So there will be two parts to this, Advait. Now, the first part is if there is a ban, the first reaction is going to be a lot of panic selling, right? The faster you sell, the better the prices you're going to get is what people will think, right? So yes, there will be a lot of panic, right? Now, the part two to also think about is, now crypto is not just a India only product, right? The world is the market for crypto, right? Now, since the world is a market for the crypto, till the very last country in the world bans crypto, Bitcoin or Ethereum, still there is a market for it to go and sell and come back, right? Now, people who think to that level, they'll hold on to it. They're not going to go ahead and do any panic selling, right? So, a lot of staunch supporters, they won't do any panic sell. But people have seen as an investment who done their short-term, investment for a short-term gain and everything. There'll be a lot of panic selling there. Yeah, and the thing is about the ban, right? Like you're saying, right? A ban will only kill the legal industry. A ban will not kill the illegal industry, right? Whatever you're trying to solve will not get solved. It will get more powered, right? Now, even those people who want to do legally, they will unnecessarily be pulled by these temptations, right? So I think that's the case with every product right now. Even a physical product, when you ban it, then illegal chain forms. This is a digital product, right? You don't have to put. I mean, I just have to remember in my mind, right? 64 digits. I just by heart it. No one even know that I'm holding a Bitcoin in my hand, right? So this, that's what we guys used to discuss, right? To regulate cryptocurrency is actually an easier task. To ban cryptocurrency is a much tougher task. You don't have technologies to do that, right? So yeah, so that's my opinion.
No, I remember before the March 2020 verdict, uh, there were a lot of sites, bitcoincash.com, localcoins.com, that were essentially finding people to get you cash. And that, I think those sites kind of died out since the March verdict because everyone wants to go to an exchange.
Yeah.
Those sites might come back up.
Yeah. That could be, and they're dangerous right now. You don't want to do your trade like that, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, let the legal industry stay.
Sure. So just last question for both of you all. What do you think the government, what would you, if you could tell Ms. Sitaraman something, the finance minister something, as per her calibrated approach, again, not knowing what that means, but what would you say the first steps that the government should do in terms of this bill, rather than outright ban things, but at least give you some form of, maybe not all-encompassing regulations, because I think that will take time. That needs standing committees and a lot of deliberation. But what is the sort of ramp up that you see the government can do to at least not hurt your business, not hurt your investors, not hurt the entire industry?
See, first thing I would say is initiate a dialogue with the stakeholders. It should be crypto investors, it should be miners, it should be India also develops a lot of crypto blockchains, right? We have Matic project, right? And of course the exchanges who are playing a major role. So bring them all into a table, try to understand. Also bring people who understand technology from the government side so that we can have a valid discussion and see where it's going. What is the future? What we will miss out if we ban it? What are we losing if we are going to regulate it, right? Then they should come to a decision, right? We need to have a public debate, right? There should be like this conversation has to be as much public as possible so that people can see what is actually happening, right? That is the first and foremost, right? So this will bring a lot of confidence to people. Okay, government is actually listening, they are doing for the good, right? And I think it's not if you look at a lot of crypto players, they'll want complete anonymity, right? They want like no government intervention. On the other side, government would want to have a lot of control. I think that we need some kind of a middle ground. That's where we are going to settle, right? So this can happen only through a dialogue, right? And that is what is going to be my expectation. Government should talk to us. They should come up with white papers, then ask for comments, right? And then take a calibrated approach.
Yeah. Yeah. So my opinion again, just adding on to Arjun right now, I think the first thing they'll have to see is okay now. The major transaction is happening through an exchange like us, right? Now, the first thing they could do of is how to first regulate us, right? Regulate cryptocurrency exchange. I think that's a good place to start, right? Because regulating an exchange, I think no one can be a better expert than the government, than a SEBI or anyone, right? So they already know how an exchange business should be regulated. Now you take that plus add on to whatever the FAFT recommendation has been, right? Just club these two and regulate exchanges first, right? Now, first, what this can do is when you do this, at least you can be sure all the legal industry that is there, that is foolproof now, right? There is no way of any illegal money entering into a system or going out of a system, right? Though we do a lot of KYC and everything, we want this to get into a legal framework now. So once you safeguarded the legal industry, then you can see, okay, now what about transfers outside the exchange, right? What should we do with that? Now that is the thing you take it as the part two, right? First, regulate and legalize the legal industry, which is doing the level best to do the right thing.
People who have registered, people who are
Yeah.
got payment gateway contracts, whatnot on
Yeah.
that side. Yeah. Sure. I'm think those are all my questions for today for both of you all. Thank you so much for your time. This was a really good conversation because we've touched upon a few things that I haven't touched upon with other crypto founders. Thank you so much, Vikram. Thank you so much, Arjun, for your time. And thank you everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed this conversation.